Welcome back to the A4Q Testing Summit. We're nearing the end of our day today, and I welcome for our very last session, Marc Hage. Today, he'll be talking to us about how you can reduce the environmental impact of our digital services. Marc, I'm very excited for your presentation and kindly hand over to you.
Hello, Abby. Thank you. And I'm really pleased to be able to talk about the environmental impact of our digital services and through a concrete example. So I will pass the summary because you will see it during the presentation. And we talk a bit about me. I'm Marc Hage Chahine. I'm QA practice manager at Callaghan. I'm working in test since 2011. It's some years now. And I'm doing expert missions since 2017. I'm quite active, particularly in French community with articles and conferences, but I also write articles in English in SQMag and QA Matters. And uh, I I'm also the creator and the animator of the French blog La Taverne du Testeur. We will go back on it later. So let's talk about the context, the impact of digital services. So digital services have a huge impact on environment. It's not because it doesn't seem material that it's not material. Uh, People have in average 9 items of equipment in Western Europe. That's a lot, and that's much more than 10 years ago. People are consuming 1 ton in average of raw materials. And about carbon dioxide, it's around 5% of the total global carbon dioxide emissions, and it's evaluated at 7% from 2025. We cannot say anymore that we don't have impact with digital. We have to do our job, and we have to reduce this impact, because even if we are better on new things, there are still legacy, and the legacy should be better too. About the tavern, my blog, La Taverne du Testeur. It's a French blog. It has been created in 2017, and it gathered more than 650 articles from many authors. More than 10 people wrote at least one article in the blog. It's the most popular French blog. It's hundreds of views every every day, and more than 2K thousands each year for more than 3 years. So it has an impact. It has an impact because people are going, they are going on, they are using servers, they are using their mobiles, they are using computers to do it. The impact, the environmental impact is real, and as it's used a lot, it has a bigger impact than if it was not used. So now that it says it's quite easy, I have an impact. But how can I evaluate this impact? If we start to think about that, there are a lot of things we can think of. Uh, do I have useless functionalities? Are the server near from the users? Uh, do I send adapted images? It's useless to send HD on people with on a mobile phone. Do I avoid video when I need? Do I use cache? Does it work on all devices? That's a lot of questions. And we will think on many things, but it's almost impossible to get a full overview and have a good coverage. But hopefully there is a referential which is quite new. It exists for 2 years now, which is called RGESN. Uh, in French, it means référentiel général d'éco-conception des services numériques, which means general referential for the eco-design of digital services. And what is it exactly? Uh, it's inspired by WCAG, the accessibility norm. It's a French norm about and concentrated on eco-design. It's something which evolves a lot and which has 9 topics. When I said it's inspired by WCAG, it's because we have criterions, and each of these criterion have a priority. In WCAG, we have A, which is a most priority, the most important one, double A, which is really important, and triple A, which is contextual, and that you should implement uh, according to the context. In RGESN, there are 3 priorities too, with the most priority, the recommending, and another one which is more like should be nice to implement. The topics, as you can see, are here to cover a lot of part of the eco design. Currently, most of the time, when we are talking about eco design and green IT, we think about developers and how they develop the techniques they use and the good practices. With RGESN, we want to remind people that it's like testing. It should be done early, and the quality depends of all. And green IT eco design is part of the quality, so it also depends on all. So there are criterion on strategy, specification, architectures, UX, UI, content, front-end, back-end, hosting, and algorithms. You can see that there is not the same number of criterion. It's still evolving, and the working group on the RGESN have more experts from UX, UI than from backend. Nevertheless, it's really nice to have it, and it helps a lot to ask questions. When I was thinking on the tavern, I was not necessarily thinking about hosting, about how do I manage content, about the architecture, about the strategies, and it gives a lot of information and things to think of in order to be sure. And once again, we are talking about design. Everyone is involved, and it's like testing early. Of course, it's something that you can do on existing digital services, as you will see in the presentation. So, eco design is good, but it remains theory, and it helps to avoid and prevent things. But we should also know what is the real uh, operational impact. And for that, I have some challenges. We need to evaluate the consumption. And the consumption, it's about network, which is around 15%, about devices, and the constructions and the consumption and construction of these devices and the servers. Uh, we need also to find appropriate tools. There are quite a lot of tools actually. It's not something that it is not that it is really hard to find. And finally, the idea is more to identify which tool I want to use. Uh, the one I heard the first of is EcoIndex. It's the most known, at least in France. It's really easy and quick to implement. You just need to have the URL of your digital services of your website, and they provide you uh, results, but it evaluates only the network. There is, and Ecoindex is free. Also. There is Hublot, which is open source and free too, which evaluates more than only the network. It's really uh, it's really evaluates things on the real consumption in the server, if I'm not mistaken, on the device and so on. But uh, it's more complicated to implement than Econex. And there is also, so it's not only a tool, it's a complete solution. And for me, it's the most mature. I know them since 2017. Uh, what they are doing is really complete, really operational. They also managed to find where in all the chain we are not performant, and they are evaluating a lot of aspects. It's a green spectre, and I really talked a lot with Green Spectre CEO Thierry Lebouc to have information on the impact. So, uh, if you really want to have the best I know is Green Spectre from far. And what is less? What are the inconvenience? Uh, it's an editor tool, so you still have to to pay something. And also, as it wants to be really precise, it's not something that you can say on the morning, okay, I will do that, so I will do it. You have to implement and prepare things. So finally, I've chosen the Ecoindex because it was the simplest and the quickest to implement, and it's still a reference, at least in France. And for my needs, which are not really big, it was and it is good enough. For me, it's a good first step. Okay, you will measure only the network, but if you improve the network, at least you have improved something. And we cannot avoid that. Uh, that's just not my job to work on my to work on my blog. So I really didn't have the time to spend hours and hours to implement and learn how to use other tools, or at least I didn't want to because I wanted to keep the pace of publishing articles. And like for test, we have to do choices. The eco index is evaluating three things on on web applications and on a dedicated URL. It means that if you want to be to do a real eco index of your services, you have to know what pages are used, how much, and the percentage and so on, and then make a concatenation. That's what I've done. that's not what I will present because it will be too big. But the main idea is to evaluate the number of requests, the size of page, the complexity of page. The calcul is quite simple. There is a weight of each criteria. Uh, the the lighter, which has a weight of 1, is the size of page, and according to the size of the page, they have a table, and according to the number of megaoctet, they give you a note between 1 and 20. Then they do the number of requests. The number of requests have the weight of 2, and they provide you a note between 1 and 20 also for that. And finally, there is a complexity of the page that they evaluate with the DOM, and it has a weight of 3. With all of that, they make the average on 20. They multiply by 5, they take 100, and they make the subtraction of the result, and you have the result of your eco index. So it's quite simple. It's really well explained. You have the calculation which is done and explained on their site. And the results, well, uh, it really depends, but it's provided between A and G. So I made it for A4Q, and as you can see, it's E. Uh, you have to know that it's quite rare to have more than C, except if you really made a work in order to have a good note. In average, uh, I see sites between D and F. So A4Q is in average. Uh, they say too many requests because they aim to have 40 requests to be good. Uh, the page is considered as too heavy, but it's not as heavy as what is the target. And I pretty think so. Here I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that it's below the median, not the average, but below the median, and uh, the DOM is too complex, and that's why it's mainly because of the DOM that the result is E, because else it will have been D. So now that I have my tools, I'm able to do the measures for the tavern. For the Tavern and the ESN, there is a tool that you can add a plugin on your browser, which is called Numecodiag. And as you can see, there are 79 criterions. It's because I have done it before an evolution which has arrived in June this year with the referential which has able. And I had 46%. That is quite easy to do, but they don't provide too many indicators. I made some work in order to have more indicators according to each topics, strategy, specification, architecture. So it's much more comprehensible like that. And what we can see is that the blog sucks at specifications, at backend, hosting, and contents. So maybe I will have to do something on that. About the eco-index. So here in the example, I provide only the home page. So you can see what were the the design at that time. It's on D. Uh, the page a bit heavier than for A4Q, less complex, and a bit less request. And as you can see, there is the median. So with 1.3, A4Q is much lighter than 50% of uh, the the pages evaluated by EcoIndex. The complexity is a bit complex, and for the request, uh, A4Q Testing Summit is also uh, lighter than 50%. That's why I said E is not doesn't mean that it's really bad, but it means for A4Q that for having a better eco-index, you have to work on the complexity of the page with the DOM. And for the tavern, what does it mean? Well, when we can see the request, it's quite good. I'm really near from the target, but the complexity and the size of the page, I could done something lighter and something simpler. You can see here that there are things which are not really really nice neither. You see that it's not professional work that could be better. So what I have done, RGSN wise, I worked at the beginning on weaknesses. For the specifications, you won't be surprised that I created a blog. I didn't make any specifications. So I set a specifications, but it's not like I care about. Uh, Backend, uh, I have no power to impact the result of the of the backend, as I'm a WordPress user and I don't know what happens behind. So it won't depend about me. Content. Content is something real about where I host videos, how it works, the pictures I send are do they have the right size? Uh, I didn't work a lot on it because 90% of the content of the tavern is text, and the text is the lighter content. There are images, of course. Uh, I have a tool now that take images and reduce them automatically uh, in uh, in the server, and then it's shared as lighter images. But it's it's not really big. It doesn't have a real impact. And for videos, they are hosted on YouTube, and I just share the links and it's displayed. So even if it's bad in RGSN, it's it's not a priority. At least it was not for me. But the hosting, I was on WordPress and I make some researches thanks to the RGESN because else I wouldn't have. And I've seen that my servers was in the US, while my users are for 75% in France and for 90%, a bit more, in Western Europe and North of Africa. So I decided to change house to to take a new a new one with the servers in France and with more ecological awareness and taking care of the environment according to some uh, some criteria, some information they provide. So I turn to auto switch. And I also reworked the UX UI because I was working on Ecodesign, but it's also nice to make the experience better. So I worked on accessibility because I had some issues with with contrast and so on. And I did also some criteria on strategy, such as I've deleted some pages that were not really used and by and viewed by the user. So I deleted some functionalities. About the eco index, with the new pages and the new design, I have something which is much lighter now. We have a really work on the limitation of the request, and finally, we are not really lower than before. But now, at least, we know what are the requests and why they are there and why we kept them. And we try to make a simpler page, and with, for example, avoiding the what I had with the home page with all the articles more than 600 on the first page. So even if you have to load automatically when you were getting down, uh, it was not a good idea to have it. So now on the home page, I have only 3 articles. I have a specific button to have all the articles with a pagination. So, what is the result of all of that? Because it's nice. The work took around 2 months. I was not doing only that, of course. I worked with someone for my for my site who helped me, and I was still working aside. So it's you have to remember that it's 2 2 months in best effort along all other activities. So it was not so much. I passed from 46 to 61% in RGESN. As you can see, strategy is better. Specification, there is one thing which is good because it was quite not complicated to implement. Backend, it's still bad. Content too, but hosting is now much better than before. That's the main improvement. And it's good for environment, but it's also good for users because now they display the page quicker because it's lighter, because it's simpler, because the server are nearer. And that's also important. I can explain where I'm not good and why I'm not good. Like in test, we can go in in production with bugs if we know what are the bugs and if we know the impact and if we know why we have done it and we can explain it. For the eco index, it's from D to C, but it's from 48 to 64 for the home page. And as you can see, the size of the page is now below the target. Same for the complexity. Well, it's on the target. And for the request, there are 3 requests left. So with 49, I was not I was not bad. So I really improved network wise the impact of the tavern. Page are lighter, page are simpler, there are a bit less requests. So that's for me a real impact. Uh, the Ecoindex also provide you some estimation on the consumption on water and electricity and so on, and it was reduced for 1,000 people. So, some conclusions. Uh, we can all improve our digital services. There are tools that exist. There are quick win actions that we can implement quite easily if we know them. Like I said, it was only 2 months in best effort for me. Uh, but the evaluation is not also that easy. We have to understand, we have to make choices, we have to identify the right actions. There are lack of indicators. Also, as you have seen, I made some handmade indicators in order to be able to better understand my results. And uh, we should need something simple and quick to start with. Uh, I talked about my work to my company, and we have decided to create something that we call Enviscore, which works on these two aspects with more indicators, and we provide an audit and the results of it, and we with note between A and F. So if you want more information, don't hesitate to contact me. The idea is to help people to start with and to implement uh, Green IT. So that's all for me. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening uh, a conference on environmental impacts. It's really something that is important for me, and it's really something that matters uh, for all of us.
Mark, we thank you for your time and your fantastic presentation. We have some questions from the audience. First off, what sparked your interest on this topic?
So I started to work on quality and the impact of digital services on human in 2021. I made a conference at TESCON on it, and when I worked on it, I was quickly on also on environmental impact. So I kept working on my side on a subject that I call sustainable quality, and which talk about the impact on people, the impact on digital services creator, and the impact on the environment. We we made a working group on it, and as my biggest weakness was on environment, I worked on it. I make some research, and I've seen and learned a lot of things that make me that okay. I want to improve the Taverne. I want to make things better. I can't just write articles and say you should do things if you don't do it yourself. Besides, the blog was quite old, 2017, so the design was quite old too. I needed to make some changes, and I knew also that I needed to improve it in accessibility wise.
Very interesting. When will there be an international referential and will this be mandatory?
So for eco design, I don't know when there will be an international referential, but to be honest, I'm quite sure that it will come in the next few years. Maybe the basis will be the RGESN. Will it be mandatory in France? I'm pretty sure that it will, because it has been designed by the same people that made the RGAA, which is inspired by the WCAG, and it's working like the WCAG. So I think that in a couple of years in France, they will announce that it will be mandatory.
Very interesting. Marc, thank you so much for your time, and to our audience that has stayed tuned for the whole day today. Thank you for watching us. If you enjoyed Marc's session, please head over to our website. You can click on his session on the program and give him a kind vote towards our best presentation and best speaker award for this year. Marc, once again, thank you so much, and we appreciate your expertise.
Thank you too. Bye and have a nice evening.